For that. Okay. Okay, so we've done that. So what I wanted to cover on this webinar really was just what AI is, because I think there is some confusion. I'm sure that you know what due diligence is, but I'm just going to put a definition just in case there were people that were just out of curiosity joining the webinar. Uh, what I've learnt as an investigator over the past 6 to 8 months using this stuff. If we've got time, I'll demo what I've developed so far. And then if anybody's got any questions, we can have a discussion at the end. We've allowed time for that. So just a little bit about me. Former senior police officer, my expertise in that area was intelligence and investigations. I worked with the Federation Against Copyright Theft for 3 years as their director of intelligence and investigations. So I spent a lot of time in the corporate arena and formed Intellect way back when, 2010, and specialised ever since really in due diligence investigations, training and risk management. And now the creator of Investigation Engine, which is a software platform, but we've integrated AI into that platform to make the whole process of onboarding, compliance, related searches and risk assessment easier. So just a quick explanation, because I think these three terms get a little bit muddled. AI, artificial intelligence, is machines doing intelligent tasks. So a computer's a machine. Your phone is a machine. It's that sort of thing. And if you put your, I'm guessing most of you, or most people on the call have actually used it in some way, shape, or form. Is that the case? Yes or no?
Yep.
Yeah. Machine learning is a way of achieving AI by allowing machines to learn from data. So doing different things and looking at how we interact with the world, the amount of data we put into things like our phones and our computers, learning from us as we interact, provide answers, pieces in books, web pages, all that sort of stuff. And then you've got these large language models, which is beginning to emerge as a really useful tool. But they're trained on huge text data sets and understand and generate human language. So if I show you Investigation Engine towards the end, you'll see how we've harnessed that. So think about huge text data sets as the internet, for example, and open source data, and the way we're using that to generate a human, what could be viewed as a human response. Due diligence, there's going to be different views on this, different definitions, but I've always viewed due diligence and KYC as a careful and thorough investigation that you conduct before you enter into any form of business relationship or transaction. And there will be numerous definitions online and different takes on this. And there are different levels of due diligence. It's really about identifying risks so you can make better decisions about your clients, the businesses you're going to work with, certainly in the AML arena, and hopefully avoid any regulatory action, reputational damage, etc. So I've been doing KYC due diligence, and you could say KYB, know your business, I suppose KYC, know your client, your customer, for 15 years easy. And the problem is getting increasingly, there's far too much information out there, which means you're going to have to invest a lot of time into doing these things, and you don't necessarily have that. A lot of my client base are compliance officers. I talk to them regularly. And they're swamped in data, and there's all the other jobs they have to do as well. There's an assumption, I think, that English is the predominant language on the internet. It's not. It's just that when we use it, we are seeing English language because it defaults to our own language settings. but there's some quite rich sources in other languages, and you have to do that if you've got uh, clients in other jurisdictions, countries, etc. And that's what I specialize in now. I tend to do EDD and help clients understand what else is out there beyond the traditional sort of Google searches. I think the other issue really is making sure you keep effective records. This is where businesses fall down all the time. They don't have a record of what they've done when asked those difficult questions. And those difficult questions could be asked by a regulator. And showing them a web page or a screen print of a web page probably won't be enough, because that's just a photograph of a photo or an image of an image, basically. So having some sort of record that you can say, I made the decision on this date at this time based on this information is really important. And I suppose I learned that the hard way from my time in the police, that if it's not written down, it never happened. And it's really about turning information, because that's what open source is, into useful business intelligence. And so you're providing some analysis. And I think we're some way there with what AI is doing. It's not perfect yet by any means. So some time ago, I did a bit of a LinkedIn poll to say, and it was particularly targeted towards compliance officers and those who do this sort of work, what's your biggest challenge? And it's quite interesting, actually, because there was a balance between finding the right information and writing up the report. And I always say that finding the right or finding information is relatively easy nowadays. Finding the right information is a bit more difficult. But my time is mostly spent writing up the report, and that can take a long time, particularly when you've gone through hundreds, maybe thousands of web pages for a complicated investigation. And interestingly, only 20% felt that maintaining an audit trail was difficult, which I find a struggle to fully believe, I've got to say. So my view was there has to be a better way of doing this, particularly with the technology that's at our fingertips. And that's what led me down this path with AI. And, the question is it compatible? Can we use it for due diligence? Hopefully I'll answer that as we go through this presentation. So I looked at a number of AI applications. And the ones on here, I'm sure you'll recognize ChatGPT. It's talked about all the time if you're on LinkedIn. And I did look at ChatGPT for my purposes in terms of what I wanted to develop. I looked at Venice, which is a privacy-based AI application. I looked at Perplexity. I'll come back to that in a moment. And I also looked at DeepSeek. Now, if you follow DeepSeek, that hit the headlines massively, probably about 2 or 3 months ago, and was saying it was cheaper, it was easy to use, had better data sources, etc. And then came about the concern that it was a Chinese AI tool, or the owners were in China, and there was the sense that it would be used in a way that may be not compatible with data protection regulation, security, etc. So that's what put me off DeepSeek. In the end, I started to use Perplexity more and more, and that's become my sort of favorite application. And I'll explain that as we go through. So, search engines versus AI. I spent a bit of time looking at this, and if you're a user of Google, and if you're using it properly or been trained in the way to use it properly, then the best way to get information is to use keywords and Boolean operators. So the ORs, the exact phrase, keywording, so coming up with effective keywords, not necessarily a sentence, because that's not very efficient. The problem is, unless you know how, you are going to get bombarded with adverts. There are ways around that. It is algorithm driven, and the only people that really understand the algorithm in Google and other search engines, I have to say, are the people that own it. We can speculate about it based on experience, but there is a whole host of reasons why certain results will come up high on page one. And if we're honest, do we ever look beyond page one? Do we go to page two, three, etc.? So we're not really in control of the order. And there's something in us psychologically that says the result at the top of the page is number one. Number one is the best because that's what we've been told from being children. So that subconsciously we are looking at results and thinking they're the best, but they're not ordered in terms of credibility. They're ordered in a way that the search engine decides what is important to them, not us. There can be pages upon pages of results and take your time to wade through that. On the upside, easy to access. Everybody knows about Google. We Google things all the time, and it's free. It's free to a point, but every time you use it, Google is gathering information about you, your habits, where you go, how long you spend there, etc., etc. So there is that to take into consideration. Okay, the difference for me with AI is you can conduct a more semantic search. So you can actually almost talk to it and ask questions as if you and I were sat asking questions of each other, and that can be a little bit easier. I still use Google, and I have to do that. So semantic search is quite good. You can ask some very complex questions, and you'll get the best out of AI if you ask better questions. So if you can keyword in AI most of the time, but you may get a lot of results that may not mean a great deal. So the more refined you are with your question and the better focused you are, the better result you're going to get for sure. And I've tried that time and time again. And you can refine that question. You can keep asking the same question until you really get drilled down deep into the results. There are no ads. For me, you get clearer and more focused results. The big one, and I think you cannot ignore this, the huge time savings. And there are free options and there are paid options. I am paying for it at the moment. I'll show you how I'm doing that. I'll talk about it for sure. So the big issues, the questions most people have is, how accurate is the information that you are getting? Now, the way I am utilizing AI at the moment is harvesting pre-existing open source information by way of a question. So in the context of AML, I've pre-configured our system to look for adverse media, keywords like bribery, corruption, arrest, court, etc., etc. So it does it for me. But I can ask follow-up questions about that. So it is pretty accurate. You do have to check it, but I would expect you to do that at Google anyway if you were using open source information outside of AI. I had a question about storage of data, and each of those applications I showed you earlier and talked about do it differently. One of the concerns I had with DeepSeek is where is that data and who's getting access to it? Is it shared with third parties? How much control do you have as an individual when you're using it? Obviously, anybody that works in AML, due diligence, compliance, etc., has got an eye on data protection. And then from our searches, from what we're doing and how we're interacting with the AI, what is it learning about us and what is it learning about the subject of our searches? But in all fairness, I don't think there's that much difference in what AI is doing. It might do it quicker than what Google is doing. So it's an issue for sure. But, all you can seek is certain reassurances by looking at what the terms and conditions of those providers say. If you're going to use it, yourself, there are options. I personally use the Perplexity app now. But I know they're developing a browser. I'll just pull it onto the screen just so you can have a look. It sits there. You've got different ways to search. You can pay for a deeper research. You get 3 free pro searches. You can bookmark things. You can set it as incognito. It works really well. And I gravitated towards Perplexity because its research capabilities are far better from all the research and from what I've found out so far. So I'm on a Mac, so the look might be slightly different. But I do know that Perplexity are about to bring out a browser, which I don't know if that worries me or not. A browser, a web browser, can gather all sorts of information about it. I'm sure that can in a way, but I've configured it in a way that it doesn't share data. If I also have it on my phone, I've experimented it on my phone. It gives you an incognito mode, so in 24 hours your searches disappear. What you should be looking for if you're going to use this stuff in a work or a personal environment is the option to prevent personal and sensitive information sharing. You might have to look through the settings, but it's about educating yourself about that. So I wanted to develop something that there were several things that I needed from it, and it took a while to get to this. I wanted comfort around data storage and protection issues. So where was the data? What they were doing with it? If we were to develop a system, I wanted protection of client data searches and wherever possible, minimal retention of data. So we're storing very, very little data at all. And that there's a bit about data protection, a bit about cybersecurity, a bit about data breaches, etc. I also wanted functionality. So accuracy of data. I wasn't totally convinced that AI was the only way to do this. So I'll show you the system shortly. I'll show you how we've achieved that. I did want the ability to keep records, to tick the box for effective compliance. One thing I really wanted to achieve was time savings and make it effortless in a way, but also give the inquisitive compliance officer the ability to go that little bit deeper if they wish. Because sometimes, the majority of clients, if you particularly low risk ones, you may well know them, for example. You don't need to spend hours upon hours delving into stuff that's only going to tell you they are who they say they are. An easy to use user interface and bit of icing on the cake, a report preparation tool. And again, it's a record. This what we've done, and AI allows you to do this. It will write reports for you, and they're pretty good. So this is my personal view after 8 months of research and working with this stuff. I don't think we can afford to ignore it. People who are saying don't use it, I think it's out of fear mostly. This is not going away. AI is not going anywhere. It's just going to get even more embedded into our lives and even more embedded into our work. And you're probably already using it in one way, shape, or form. There's lots of offerings out there. In terms of due diligence, I would say you've got to use it with caution and alongside other sources. And I only say that because it does return some odd results sometimes. For example, I'm on a bit of a diet again today over the past couple of months. And every so often I'll weigh myself and it'll tell me in sort of pounds. So I go to Perplexity. I went to Perplexity this morning and said, tell me what 203 pounds is in stones and pounds. So it said, it's 205, which equates you are 14 stone and 5 pounds, or 14 stone 7 pounds. I'm thinking, well, that's not quite right. So it does make some odd conclusions sometimes. It is excellent as an overview, particularly where we're using it. It's good as a report writer, but you have to check and edit. But it makes that whole report writing so much easier. And as I've explained, it will return a very odd result sometimes. And I've raised this with support, and they've not really come back with a coherent answer, if I'm really honest. So I don't think they know. But every time we do another search, the system gets better. So that, for me, is the machine learning aspect. So if it's okay, what I'll do is I'll show you what we've done in the investigation engine in terms of how we've achieved a capability to search for AML due diligence relevant information. So if you just give me a second. So this is the system. I'm not going to demonstrate passport because I'm recording this and I will probably use it on social media feeds. And I don't really want to put my passport onto a social media feed or spend quite a bit of time editing it to blur it. But to explain, you can upload a passport on this system. It will scan the passport and tell you whether it's valid. It will then move to automated searches very, very quickly after you've pressed the button. But we've also got the ability to do what's known as manual entry. So not all companies will have a passport, or they might be waiting for the passport. So you've got this ability to skip that if you wish and use another option. So what I'm going to do is I am going to search my name. I'm not going to enter my date of birth yet. I'm going to put location Yorkshire, and I'm going to put investigations in there. So when I teach due diligence investigations for open source, if you can come up with a name and two data points, like a location and what that person does, invariably you're going to find some pretty good information quite quickly. So we framed it in that way with the AI. So when I hit this button, it goes off and it runs three distinct searches, or it will do. The first one is adverse media and information. So it's going off Colin Tansley in Yorkshire to do an adverse information media check. So it's pulling from a variety of sources at the moment. So you can see that it's got 10 bullet points. You can get it to write in a paragraph. It says who I am, what my background is, what we do, any awards, tells me there's no adverse reports, criminal charges or court proceedings, which is interesting. That's good. No illicit payments, etc. I design risk assessment platforms for our guidance, not mentioning legal action. And what it also does, it pulls through the references. And so what we can do, we can travel to any of them and look at the page and check it. And what we can also do is add to the report. You're also able to do a sanctions check. So remember, we pre-programmed the system to do this using AI. So it doesn't find, it gives me 99% confidence score. There's no global sanctions watch list, etc. So we can add that. And then, am I a pet? So we'll do that. As far as I know, I'm not. Uh, no suggestion of being a pep. It pretty much reinforced what we already know, to be honest. So we can add that. But there is another check we can do, which I'll show you in a moment. What I've also done is put in what's known as Query Builder. So for the more inquisitive, let's say you wanted to know, you had a question about me. So what you can say is from, this is what I mean about a semantic search. I'm just asking that he's got a UK registered company. What can you find? There we go. So we've got the company incorporated January 23, um, associated with another company as well. Is where he's PSC. Uh, and we could ask a follow-up question about the address of the company if we wish. Hopefully get the gist of that. We can then go, this is what I mean by the hybrid model. We go to web search and it's pre-programmed with adverse terms. So we're also relying now on Google. So we're just double checking stuff to see what else is out there. And it's pulled up lots of information, all relevant. So in a sense, it's removed the noise you would ordinarily see within Google. And it's always going to pull in one or two because it's got a Colin Tansley there, but that's not me. But that is, we can add these individually to the report. That's definitely me. That is, so on and so forth. We've inbuilt it's pre-programmed with adverse terms that you can actually untick that. There's a translation tool. You just copy and paste anything you find that is perhaps foreign language. There's nothing there about me to that sense. Company's house. There is this one. That's me. You can travel through to the company, but looking at that address, I know that's not me. The travel company is there, Intellect Group. We can do another sanctions check. Doesn't find anything. That will go to a credible database and do another search just so you're sure. What we can then do is download the report. And what we've got is if it was a passport check, it would populate the date of birth. But what it's done here is it's given us a breakdown of everything we've done there. We can edit if we wish. We can look at all these resources. We've got the evidence of we've done an adverse media check, sanctions check, political exposure, and we've also got everything from the web that we chose. And if you wish, you can put comments in here saying we've checked this, we've done that. We need to follow up with this, or it's not relevant. We've got UK Companies House search results, and we've got the fact there are no results on sanctions and PEPs. So in terms of your sort of regulatory compliance and keeping records, you're covered. I'm not going to go through this, but what you can now do is you can then advance to a customer or client risk assessment, and you can do the same sorts of checks for a company as well. So we can do a company search. Again, because it's time, I won't do that, but basically you will come here, you put in Intellect Group, Yorkshire. The difference here is it would pull through the PSC data. And you've got some other facilities you can use as well. So that's how we are harnessing AI to enhance and improve the process. And hopefully you'll see how quick that can be, because it does, if you think about how long that would take to do Google, copying, pasting, visiting, writing, keeping notes, etc., it would take a long time. And I know that from experience. So, okay. So I have whizzed through that, but what I'm going to do is we can have a chat. If you've got any questions, you can either shout them out, you can put them in the chat section. I'll put my contact details in here as well. If anybody wants, I think Amanda and